Okay, welcome back to Huckins on Film. I'm your host Kyle Huckins, and we're talking Evil Dead, the remake. Come on, we all knew I was going to this. And I'm still kind of trying to process how I feel about this. Because it wasn't an offensively bad movie by any stretch. This wasn't like Texas Chainsaw 3D, where it was an incredibly expensive and elaborate fuck you to anyone who liked the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. Seriously, that's all that fucking movie was. It was just... It's one of those, oh, you like those movies, huh? Well, fuck you. This definitely wasn't like that. There was a lot of love shown for the original series. In fact, that's kind of the problem here. There's a little too much love for the original in there. Because there are so many scenes and lines taken from the original and Dead by Dawn. There's a lot of Dead by Dawn in this flick. In fact, it's one of those moments where it's like, there is a line between homage and plagiarism. And honestly, you could flip a coin to make that decision. And I wouldn't be surprised if the damn thing landed on Edge. Because there are a lot of the famous lines in here. There's a few instances where there's the famous line, but they changed a word. Still trying to process if that annoys me or not. Kind of leaning towards it does. And also when it's not repeating Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, there's a fair amount of The Exorcist in this movie. Because the main possessed character, Mia, she looks like Reagan. Like when she's possessed, she has a very Reagan McNeil look to her. And also, when the demons are threatening people, there's a lot of profanity, they're very vulgar. A lot, like, seriously, it reminded me of The Exorcist. I was actually waiting for one of them to say, "Your mother sucks cocks in hell." I have no problem with the vulgarity, but it's just, it felt more like The Exorcist than an Evil Dead flick. And also, it's just, I'm sitting there like, I could be watching The Exorcist or the Evil Dead movies. It's really how it made me think. Now, the acting's pretty solid. They did put a few new tweaks in there, which I like. I kind of wish they would have done more of that. Because it's 5 friends going to the woods in the middle of nowhere. Basically because one of them has a drug habit. And they're trying to help her kick it cold turkey. Out in the middle of nowhere in her parents' old cabin out there. And unfortunately they abandoned that kind of quickly. Like, I really think they could have done a lot more with that. That was, at the beginning that was new, and the ending, they actually put a new spin on it. it was... I don't want to give it away. But it was okay. It was actually a little too conventional for my liking. Like, basically, it's one of those... They were trying to summon the demon to come back to Earth. And it gets back, and they have to take it out. It was a little too conventionally done for me. Like I said, I like that they did that. They tried to do something a little different. It didn't really work that well. But unfortunately, in between those two, it's mostly just Evil Dead ripoffs. You know, you have the tree rape. Although in the trailer they tease the whole, "We're gonna get you, not another beat, time to go to sleep." That's not in this. There's a bit of singing by the demon. And the possessed, you know, they do the whole switching back and forth from human to demon to screw with everyone's head, which one of the things I really liked about it, Evil Dead. The original ones. But all in all, another problem is a lot of the stuff that happens, they telegraph the hell out of it. I don't even know why I'm doing this movie, trying to avoid spoilers, because this movie spoils itself repeatedly. I mean, and it's not even the slightest bit subtle about it. Because you have the Necronomicon, which, you know, it's... I mean, it looks like it's made out of flesh. It doesn't have the face on the front. I get that. Yeah, I get that choice. I'm not going to complain about that. My only problem is you get to see inside the book a lot. And there's a lot of ancient writing, but the translations are like written over them in red ink, which just looked wrong. I mean, to me, anyone who could figure out that language is probably a historian. And there's not a historian on the planet who's going to write the translation on the original manuscript. And if you ever have thought of writing a translation of something on the original manuscript, I have a friend in Philly who will cut your head off. You know, when she's done, they will not find your body. And I'll totally help her do it, by the way, because you don't do that to historical documents. No, it's not done. You don't. But there's also a lot of pictures in it. And anytime there was an important picture, you know, I don't know what the book turned to it, but the camera would come in a little close. And then it was... That was really a big problem, was they just telegraphed everything that was coming. The film, now, there were good parts. There's the gore. The gore is mostly practical, and there's a lot of it. It's, in fact, it's kind of hard to say, given that this is where the Dead by Dawn resemblance comes in, because that's where Sam Raimi really discovered his love of the blood geyser. And Fede Alvarez, the director of this one, he just said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna guise some fucking blood today," in the words of the cinema snob. And the blood was guised. There's no two ways about it. The blood was guised. But it went on through most of the movie, and it just got to the point where it's like, I kind of feel like I'm watching Dead Alive, and the gore is really having the opposite effect. Because this is just kind of funny, because it's so cartoony and over the top. So, a little more restraint in the gore department would have been nice. Yeah, I'm still processing this movie because it didn't suck. But it could have been a lot better. Also, unfortunately, it had that typical horror, old current horror movie look to it where just everything's just kind of gray and blue. It just gives everything a really bleh tinge to it. And it really doesn't help that, as you may have heard, Roger Ebert died today. So, in his honor, I watched one of his all-time favorite movies, which I've discussed before, I Spit on Your Grave. And, watching that, which just had such a vibrant color palette. And then you watch a 2000s horror movie, which is just drab. That contrast just so stark. It's kind of, it's just kind of depressing looking. There's a difference between dark and just gray. It's one thing I don't really like about newer horror movies. A lot of them are just too gray for my liking. I'm going to have one spoiler here. Bruce Campbell does appear in this. You gotta wait till after the credits. And it's a completely pointless cameo. Because you just kind of see him in shadow. It's just groovy. It's like, that was cool, but I could have stayed home and watched Army of Darkness for that. Kind of wish I had. Love that movie. I don't really need to ever watch it again, but I love it. Yeah, seriously, I'm one of those. I've watched that movie way too many times. But it's just like everything was there to make a good Evil Dead movie. And it was so busy trying to cram in Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn that it really kind of forgot to try to be its own movie. And it started off like that. And it actually ended differently, but the middle was just homage / thievery to the extreme. Acting was I didn't really notice any standout performances, but there wasn't anyone just like who was driving me nuts for one reason or another. I mean, there is one character in this, and she's basically just in it because there were 5 people in the original Evil Dead. She really doesn't do very much. Like, she's there just so bad things can happen to her. It really doesn't serve much of a purpose. But it's one of those, she wasn't bad, but honestly, she was just unnecessary. But it wasn't, like, aggravating or anything. Also, the climax of this movie goes on way too long. Because you have the climax, and then there's another one. You know, it's one of those, like, oh, okay, movie's winding down. And the first false ending is stupid. There's just no other way to say it. It's dumb. You know, I really don't want... Yeah, try not to spoil it, but it is one of those movies where it just... Oh... This makes no sense. That's not how that works. Oh, also, I think a duct tape company may have sponsored the making of this movie, because this movie, it's all about the duct tape. Duct tape can do everything in this movie. It really gets kind of overboard. But it's my recommendation. Honestly, I'd probably wait for it to come to Netflix. Maybe if you got like a $5 theater near you. You know, like a second run theater or something like that. Yeah. Full price opening night? No, not worth it. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else, so I'm gonna do the trailers as best as I recall them. I saw the Red Band one for Pain and Gain by Michael Bay. Got to see a lot more of it than I had been seeing. You know, the short trailers look kind of fun. The longer one, the more you see this movie, like, oh, that's right, this is the guy who made Transformers. Because this, it looks bad. Like, at first, it looked like just, like, goofy, breezy fun. Like, not a smart movie at all, but possibly entertaining. The extended trailer, it just looks awful. It looks really bad. There was the internship, you know, which is the wedding crashers try to get hired by Google. Or product placement, the movie, as some others may call it. It just looks sad. It looks pathetic. There's a new James Franco film, This Is the End. It's all about a party at James Franco's place with Seth Rogen, Michael Cera, Jonah Hill, and the rapture breaks out. It looks really stupid, but on the other hand, that's such an off-the-wall premise that I'm curious. It's like, oh, a bunch of celebrities are at a party and the rapture breaks out. Yeah, I can't say I've ever heard of a movie doing that. So I may check that one out. I didn't think it looked great, But like I said, that's such an off-the-wall premise that I'm kind of curious. And the funniest trailer of the night. Oh. Alright. Before that, I want to get to The Conjuration by James Wan, who directed Insidious, Saw, Death Sentence. That looks pretty good. I'm a sucker for James Wan. You know, I loved Saw, I loved Insidious, I loved Death Sentence. If Donnie Wahlberg hadn't been so piss-freezingly aggravating, I would have loved Dead Silence. But he just aggravated the shit out of me in that movie. But I do trust James Wan. It just looks like a really bizarre movie. Like it looks like the actual haunted house movie you thought you were getting with Insidious. Again, there's probably a twist where it isn't. But I'm okay with that. Oh, yeah. Sorry, just remembering another movie called You're Next. Which is about partying, you know, it's just like a group of adults getting together for a dinner party or weekend at this like mansion in the middle of nowhere. And they're being terrorized by a dude with a crossbow wearing a cat mask. It's one of those I look at like, looks like it could be somewhat entertaining. But more than likely, I'm going to walk out of the theater really pissed I spent $12 on that. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to lean towards the negative on that. But the coup de grace. New Ethan Hawke movie called The Purge. Read about this on Twitter today from Film Brain. This is the dumbest fucking premise I've seen possibly ever. Just talks about how America has there's almost no crime, there's almost no unemployment. There's a utopia. Why is there utopia? Because one day a year, for 12 hours, they have The Purge, which is the name of the movie. And basically, there is no law, there is no government, there's no emergency services, it just, you have to try to survive for 12 hours while everyone goes fucking nuts. And they show the trailer, and like, it looks like a decent house under attack movie, but the premise behind it is so fucking dumb. And I'm watching it like, oh god, this is so stupid. And then it just, the trailer's coming to an end, and you see the flag, it says, from sea to shining. I burst out laughing. Like, it looks like a decent, it really does look like it could be a decent siege movie. But the underlying premise is just stupid. And I really try not to hate the premise. I really try to give every premise a fair shot. Because I have seen movies where, like, okay, I'm not that into the premise of this, but then it gets pulled off. So, for the most part, I've tried to not really concern myself with the premise and just concern myself with the execution. premise is just dumb. I mean, this is seriously stupid. And it's also like, oh, I really wish Ethan Hawke wasn't in it, because I like him. No, I don't want to watch something he's in ironically. I just want to watch it and enjoy it. I don't think this is going to be good. Anyway, that's about all I got. So, thanks again for watching Huckins on Film. I'm your host, Kyle Huckins. Fucking off.